Today I'm making an epic centerpiece for a Necron Tomb World board, as well as some scattered terrain to get you inspired for the new Codex Necrons, and maybe get you started on making some terrain of your own. Now, the only Necrons I own are punching bags for my Blood Angels, but I wanted to celebrate these space skellies getting their own Codex in a way that makes sense for me here on Hobby with Ollie. They're a faction I don't know too much about, so to start with for my terrain project, I need an art board for some inspiration. My aim is to eventually end up with a whole board's worth of terrain for the Necrons, so I want to start off with a big centerpiece and some smaller, slightly more maneuverable pieces to go around it. Now, Dawn of War was a big source of inspiration when I was scouting around online for images that I could put on my art boards, as it's got some really cool kind of fundamental Necron structures, which I think will be really easy for me to replicate as terrain pieces. Now that I've got some cool images on my artboard, let's now see how we can translate those onto the tabletop. Initially, I made some templates for pillars. I printed these out onto paper to see if my design skills stacked up in the real world. I was pleasantly surprised to find that these pillars went together really easily, so I turned my hand to a much larger monolith-style object, which again seemed to hold up. Buoyed by my success, I set about considering what materials I'm going to use to actually make these things. I started off with XPS foam, having the advantage of being light and easy to sculpt with a knife or hot wire tool, but it wasn't giving me the precise angles and smooth finish that I associate with Necron structures. In the end, I decided to build the pillars out of plasticard, which is sheet styrene, the same plastic that we know and love from building our Games Workshop models. It's easy to cut with a hobby knife, and I even got black plasticard, which should look a bit better if any paint chips off over time due to wear and tear. Starting out with the basic structures, I stitched the templates to my plasticards and then set about cutting them out. It took a little bit of practice, as this is my first time working with this material. Eventually, I found the best method was first score the plasticard with a light touch from a knife, before coming back in with a deeper cut and then snapping the pieces off the sheet. This snapping helps to keep a really sharp edge, though occasionally pieces would be a little less neat just due to my cutting action. I'm only human after all, and not a futuristic cyber husk. For the larger terrain piece, I started by gluing the sides together with super glue, but eventually decided to use plastic cement, as I realised that it would work to give me a stronger bond, particularly as this larger monolith was a little bit wobbly at first. If I were doing this again, I'd recommend putting some tabs onto the edges of the pieces so they kind of slot into each other. But in the meantime, what I did with this project, as I didn't have enough plasticard to go for a round 2, is I just made some supports that sit inside the structure, which should help to give it some structural stability. I stuck the top on the monolith, which again, due to my lack of engineering skills, needed a bit of patching up with some card. I glued this on with PVA. Once that was done, time for a little bit of greebling up on the pillars. I cut out small panels for the faces of my pillars, and glued these on with plastic cement to the 6 small pillars I had made. During this time, I put on some tunes and zoned out, so let me do the same for you with a blast of my band Goliath over a sweet time lapse.
As everything may change, but you got to roll with the punches. And everything may change, but these words are always mine. So I'll say one more time for the road up ahead. If we forget ourselves, then we're better off dead, and I feel alive. It's one more song and it's one more line. Forget one more month of wasting time. The time to feel alive. Feel alive.
If you like what you hear, you can check out a link to our Spotify in the description down below. You may also be able to see that the Christmas decorations are up here at Hobby with Ollie HQ, so be sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the festive shenanigans we've got planned over the next couple of weeks. We're also rapidly approaching a huge milestone of 5,000 subscribers on the channel, so thank you so much to every single one of you who has subscribed and watched my videos over the last couple of years. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do click it, as it would be amazing to be able to finish 2023 off with a bang at 5k subs. Okay, that was a lot of cutting and sticking, but I've simplified my designs a little from their original form. I have added one additional feature though, which is a little googly eye which sits in the middle of each pillar, which kind of helps to lend that sort of orb of energy in the center. Now, these are going to be covered up in the next step, but for now, remember, the Eye of Imhotep is watching you. Have you been naughty or nice this year? Time to paint. Starting with some white primer, I next applied my secret weapon, AK Interactive Fluorescent Green. This will sit in the recesses and give that classic Necron glow. I neatened up these smaller pillars with a little bit of thinned down black through the airbrush as well, which is going to just kind of stop it from being too spread out over the face of the pillars, and instead really focused around those energized cores. The monolith will be relying on its paint job to sell the effect, and so I sprayed bands of green over white primer, which were masked off with a small piece of plasticard. With that completed, I added on one bonus greeble to the top of the monolith, and here is my completed Necron terrain. Now, this isn't quite enough for a full board just yet, but I've got some cool ideas for other things I could include. One of my friends who actually plays Necrons recommended to me that I include like a floating rock with sort of energized lightning things, and I'd love to actually try and make that here. So let me know if that's something you'd like to see, or if you have any other ideas for Necron terrain, let me know in the comments down below. If you'd like to try making these for yourself, head on over to the Discord server in the description down below, where I'll be sharing the templates that I use to build my terrain so that you can riff on it and make it for yourselves. It's also a really nice way for you guys to share your hobby projects with me and get in touch with the amazing community that we're developing here on Hobby with Ollie. Thank you so much for watching this episode. My name has been Ollie, this has been my hobby, and I will see you next time.